The string lights in our backyard glowed like a stage I was never meant to stand on. People cheered, raised their glasses, and snapped photos, every flash landing on my sister. No one seemed to notice that I turned 18 that night. I stood behind a line of champagne flutes, warm lantern light sticky against my skin, watching the MC tap his mic and shout, "Let's celebrate Evelyn 18 again." Something inside me paused. Even the music felt out of place. I set my glass down slowly, quietly, and in that moment I understood. This party would be the last memory my family ever had of me, though they didn't know it yet. I grew up in a house where light always tilted toward Evelyn. Even as kids, she never had to ask for attention, it clung to her the way Texas heat settles over Austin, heavy and automatic. I learned early how to step around it, how to shrink myself so the glare wouldn't burn. I must have been 8 when I realized my role. Evelyn had a cheer competition, and Mom spent the entire morning curling her hair, spraying glitter onto her cheeks, pinning a bow so large it brushed her shoulders. I stood in the doorway holding my own brush, waiting to be noticed. I wasn't. Dad glanced at me only long enough to say, "Sweetie, be helpful," before handing me her water bottle. So I was. That was the pattern. She shined, I supported. By middle school it was routine. Evelyn talked. I listened. She won. I clapped. She needed. I carried. At dinners, relatives pulled her into long, affectionate conversations about her beauty and future. When they finally turned to me, their questions were thin, polite placeholders. "How's school? Still drawing?" Before drifting back to her. But the moment that carved itself into me happened when I was 15. I spent weeks making her a scrapbook, sketches, watercolor corners, layouts I worked on every night under my desk lamp. I wrapped it in brown paper, tied it with twine, proud in my quiet way. She opened it, flipped 2 pages, and stopped. "It's cute," she said, already admiring her reflection in the new tablet Mom had just given her. "But I mean, Mom bought me something real this year." She set my gift aside. The spine bent when it hit the table. Something inside me bent with it. Later that night, sitting on my bedroom floor, I tore out one page, a sketch of a room I dreamed of designing someday. Tall windows, soft light, a chair facing sunrise. I held it for a long time, wondering if anything I made would ever matter. The rest of the scrapbook disappeared into my closet. That one page stayed. It's still in my sketchbook. As I grew older, the imbalance sharpened instead of softening. Evelyn got a car at 16. I got the privilege of helping her choose the paint color. She hosted friends. I made snacks. Relatives asked about her grades, her prom dress, her college choices. My life remained background noise. Mom called me independent, the kind of daughter who didn't need much. It sounded like praise until I realized it was permission to overlook me and save their energy for the daughter who demanded more. Dad once said, "You're steady, Autumn. Evelyn's fragile. She needs us more." But fragility never stopped her from stepping on everything in her way. By 17, I could read our house like a map. The noisy rooms belonged to them, the quiet corners belonged to me. I stopped asking for rides, for help, for attention. Silence was easier. Predictable, safe. And yet, somewhere beneath that quiet, a small part of me still waited. Waited for someone to look at me, the way they looked at her. Waited to be seen without having to earn it. That hope died the night of my 18th birthday, killed by one careless sentence that confirmed what I had always known. In this family, visibility was a privilege, not a birthright. The heat that night wasn't just the summer air. It clung to me the moment I stepped into the backyard, reminding me my place was always a few steps behind everyone else. String lights draped across the patio flickered against the pool, casting gold across faces that never turned my way. My hands were still sticky from arranging candles on the tables. Earlier, Mom had handed me a lighter and said, "Make sure everything looks perfect before the guests arrive." She didn't say happy birthday. When the MC tapped the microphone, the vibration rattled my glass. Conversations paused. A hush lifted through the heat. "Let's give a huge cheer," he said, to Evelyn celebrating her 18th again. The crowd erupted. I didn't. For a second, everything blurred: the lanterns, the voices, Evelyn's dazzling smile as she stepped forward in the white dress she bought just for the night. My eyes drifted to the cake. 3 tiers, marble smooth frosting, her name written across the top in gold. Mine wasn't anywhere. Mom touched my arm soft, but firm enough to root me in place. "Don't step up," she whispered. "It'll confuse people." Confuse people. At my own birthday. I looked at Dad, hoping for something: recognition, guilt, anything. But he didn't meet my eyes. He just clapped too loudly, the way people do when they're trying to pretend everything is normal. Evelyn made a wish, cameras flashed, guests chanted her name. Someone beside me murmured, "She looks beautiful, this is so her night." And in that moment, something sharp and simple slid into focus. There was no mistake. No mix-up. This wasn't my celebration accidentally overshadowed. This was theirs intentionally reassigned. My throat tightened, but my breathing stayed steady. I did what I always did. Quiet, contained, invisible. I lifted my glass halfway as if to join the toast, then set it down before it touched my lips. No one noticed. A bead of candle wax slid onto the tablecloth and cooled into a pale, final shape. I watched it harden, then I turned. I walked past the laughter, past the music, past the house that had never truly been mine. Barefoot on warm pavement, my dress brushing my knees, I didn't look back, not once. I didn't run. I simply kept moving until the backyard noise dissolved into a faint hum swallowed by the heat of the empty neighborhood street. The pavement held the day's warmth, but the air around me had cooled enough to sting my skin. I had no idea where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay. When the bus finally pulled up at the main road, its headlights sliced through the dark like a quiet invitation. I stepped on without thinking. The driver glanced at my dress, my bare feet, then back at the road. He didn't ask questions. I was grateful. The doors hissed shut behind me, a clean line drawn between everything I had been and everything I was about to become. I took a seat near the back. The engine hummed low and steady. For the first time all night, no one told me to smile, to stay quiet, to step aside. Just the steady roll of wheels on asphalt, street lights flickering across the windows, the faint smell of old coffee lingering in the air. Somewhere between Austin and the next town, I reached into my purse and pulled out my sketchbook. The cover was soft from years of use, the corners frayed. My fingers found the place where a page had been torn out long ago, the page that held my first dream. The empty imprint stared back at me. I flipped to a blank sheet and lowered my pencil. A room took shape. Tall windows, open light. A single chair turned toward sunrise. I didn't know it then, but that sketch became the first draft of the life I was about to build. The bus carried me north through the night. With each passing hour, I felt something shedding: Dad's silence, Mom's precision, Evelyn's shadow stretching across every room. By dawn, when the skyline of New York rose up in the distance, something inside me settled. Not peace, not hope, just resolve. Queens was all I could afford. A narrow room with peeling paint, a window facing a brick wall, and a radiator that clanged whenever it felt like waking. I paid the deposit with my summer internship savings, $600 total. When the door shut behind me, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt open. I placed my sketchbook on the windowsill. The room was small, but for the first time in my life, the space belonged to me. My days blurred into a montage of survival. Morning shifts at a small cafe, steam rising from milk pitchers, wiping tables until my hands ached, old jazz humming through battered speakers. Nights spent hunched over my laptop, online classes, scribbled notes, digital models built to the rhythm of traffic echoing through thin walls. I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. In the city, anonymity was a gift. One morning, while wiping down the cafe counter, an older woman approached. She carried herself with the stillness of someone who understood space the way others understand language. She pointed to a napkin where I'd absent-mindedly sketched a corner of the cafe. "You drew this?" she asked. I nodded. She studied the lines for a long moment, then said quietly, "You see the room. Most people only see objects." Her name was Marisol Hale. I would later learn she was known for turning abandoned warehouses into homes with soul. That day, She simply handed me her card. Come.
Come by the studio, she said. I might have a space for you.
It wasn't a promise, just an opening wide enough for hope to slip through. Her studio was a converted warehouse, all brick walls and skylights pouring in soft afternoon light. Marisol spread my sketches across a long oak table, studying them in silence. Her finger paused on the drawing I'd made on the bus, the imagined room with tall windows and a chair waiting for sunrise. You build from absence, she murmured. I didn't ask what she meant. I understood. The internship she offered paid almost nothing, but it gave me access to what I needed. Tools, scraps of wood, fabric samples, half-finished rooms waiting to be reimagined. I swept floors, labeled materials, learned how light behaves against stone, how texture can soften wounds you never say out loud. My days shifted again, studio by day, cafe shifts by night, my sketchbook always in my bag. I learned to listen to space, how a room breathes when you move a chair 2 inches, how shadows tell the truth when people won't. Marisol rarely praised me, but when she did, it came in sentences that felt like anchors. You work like someone who's had to earn every inch. You understand quiet. You design with memory. I built furniture from discarded pieces, tables from old beams, lamps from rusted copper, a chair that creaked like it remembered something. Each project became another way to rebuild myself in fragments. 3 years passed in a rhythm of grind and growth. I worked until my fingers bruised, until my eyes blurred at 2 in the morning, until the girl who walked out of her backyard barefoot felt like someone I used to know. She wasn't gone, just quieter now. An echo I respected instead of a bay. Then one evening, Marisol placed a stack of files on my desk. Clients are asking for you by name, she said. No ceremony. No smile, just the shift in the air I'd been working toward. That night, in my tiny room facing the brick wall, I opened my laptop and built a spreadsheet: expenses, savings, projected costs, potential clients, a list titled Steps to Independence. Rows rearranged, deleted, confirmed. No noise, just decisions settling into place. By morning, I had a real plan. Autumn Atelier would be mine. My studio, my space, my name. The bus had carried me away. My work would carry me forward. This time I wasn't running. I was building. This time I wasn't fixing what they had broken, I was creating what I never had. When my TED Talk went live, I didn't expect anything to happen. It had been a small event in a quiet auditorium, the kind where people listen carefully and leave without applause that echoes. I told a story without names, a girl whose 18th birthday was taken from her, who walked out mid-party and chose silence as a boundary. 2 days later, my inbox cracked open. Messages, requests, articles, clips being shared with captions like, "This is what healing looks like." The video crossed 1 million views before I even processed the first wave. I didn't respond. I kept moving. Morning at the studio, sketch revisions, client calls, Luca handing me coffee that was always too sweet. Routine insulated me from the noise. Then the interviews started. Magazines wanted to talk about the girl rebuilding herself. Design blogs asked about my process. Podcasts asked about resilience. I kept my answers short. I let silence do the heavy lifting. The first tremor came from Texas. A text from my mother. "We saw the video. Evelyn is upset. Maybe you should check on her." No acknowledgement of the talk. No recognition of my work. Just the same gravitational pull toward Evelyn. I didn't answer. Later, my father wrote, "Congratulations on your success. But please understand your sister feels targeted. Targeted. By a story with no names. The familiarity stung more than the words. I set my phone aside and kept measuring a slab of reclaimed oak for a shelving project. The tape clicked cleanly against the edge. Nothing in my hands trembled. The next morning, Luca hurried into the studio with his tablet. "You need to see this." A gossip site had posted an interview with Evelyn. Her face filled the screen. Composed, practiced. Headline: Sister of viral designer says, "People don't know the real story." I didn't open it at first. The glow of the screen reflected off my metal drafting ruler. When I finally read it, the words were predictable. She exaggerates for attention. We always treated her well. She left because she couldn't handle comparisons. I hope she's okay, but the internet doesn't know the truth. I didn't feel anger. Just confirmation. Some people collapse when they're not the center. By evening, the wildfire had already begun screenshots. Stitched reactions. Strangers digging up years of Evelyn's old posts that contradicted every polished sentence she'd spoken. Comment sections turned heavy and fast. Still, I stayed silent. Silence has weight. It tilts the truth toward the surface. That night, I filed the paperwork to expand Autumn Atelier into a full studio. I signed the final Manhattan lease, updated registrations, transferred funds. Each signature felt like a quiet door gently closing behind me. No slamming. No drama. Just closure. A week later, the TED Talk passed 5 million views. A boutique hotel asked me to design their lobby. A major brand wanted a collaboration. Clients wrote that my work made their spaces breathe again. Meanwhile, Evelyn's online empire buckled, comments disabled, sponsorships paused. Her perfect content drowned beneath stories from strangers who recognized the pattern, because they'd lived it too. One afternoon, Marisol stopped beside me as I adjusted a lighting mock-up. "You don't have to explain anything," she said. "They're doing that work for you." I nodded, though something in my chest tightened, an old ache finally pulling free from its root. That night, while lining books on the studio shelves, my phone buzzed. An email. From Evelyn, one sentence. I didn't know it would hurt this much to be unseen. The words sat on the screen like something fragile and unfinished. Not an apology. Not accountability, just the first honest thing she'd said in years. I didn't reply. Some endings aren't meant to be softened. By week's end, Autumn Atelier opened its doors. Clients stepped inside beneath the tall windows. Journalists took quiet notes. Light moved across the polished floor like something finally settling into its rightful place. I walked through the space, my space, with the steadiness of someone who rebuilt herself without anyone's permission. Justice didn't arrive loudly. It stitched itself quietly through consequences. Through contrast. Through silence. The reversal was complete. Balance restored. When the noise finally faded, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like air, clean, unclaimed, filling the corners of my loft. New York carried silence differently. Not heavy. Not punishing. Just present. Most nights I stayed late at the studio, letting the dim pendant lights fall across unfinished models and stacks of reclaimed wood. Outside, the city pulsed distant sirens, a gust of wind sliding past the window, the low rumble of the subway beneath the concrete. A rhythm that asked nothing of me. I found myself drawn again and again to the olive tree in the center of the loft. Its leaves brushed the skylight, catching the last of the evening glow. 3 years ago, I couldn't keep a plant alive in the dark room I rented in Queens. Now this one reached higher than I could. Sometimes I sat on the floor with my back against the cool brick wall, sketchbook open on my lap. Lines flowed softly like corners of imagined rooms, quiet spaces becoming shape. No deadlines. No pressure. Just creation. Austin drifted from my mind, not out of anger but distance. That house, once my entire universe, existed now like the outline of a place I used to live, recognizable but empty. Evelyn's email replayed once, then faded like background static, unanswered, not ignored. Just unnecessary. My parents never reached out again. No calls, no explanations. Their silence used to feel like erasure. Now it felt like room. One evening while preparing my exhibition, I set up the final piece, a glass cube glowing softly from within. Inside it, nothing but a chair and a single white wall. Not meant to impress. Meant to feel like the first clean inhale after a storm. I switched off the gallery lights until only that cube remained, gold pooling across the concrete floor like a small sunrise. Later, walking into my loft, I caught the reflection of my living space merging with the city lights outside. My home built from nothing but years of quiet rebuilding. I exhaled. The air cooled against my lips. For the first time in my life, I didn't wonder who might be watching. I was enough for myself. Some people rebuild their lives by shouting their pain into the world.
I rebuilt mine by turning the lights on in a room no one ever thought I'd own. Silence didn't break me.
It shaped the walls, the floor, the doorway I finally walked through without fear. And standing here now,
Looking out at the city breathing beneath my windows,
I understand something simple. You don't have to return to the place that erased you to prove you exist. You can build forward. If my story stayed with you, stay for the next one. Let's keep walking toward the